Welcome back, everybody. So glad you could be with me here today. We're going to work on the wrap up of the 4.5 smoother shootout competition. Now, I don't want to sound like some of the people in latter years where everyone's a winner. Now, there are some clear differences in these planes. However, I'm going to go through these two at a time, just like I did with the shootout, and show you some of the things that I feel you should consider if you're considering a 4.5 jumbo or wide smoother. Now, first up, we always have to talk about budget. And I'm going to skip ahead here and say, all right, you can go to a sale and you can buy a Stanley 4.5, and you may even stumble on a Bedrock 4.5, 604.5 at some incredibly low price. Okay, I'll give you that. But it all begins with condition, condition, and condition. This particular 4.5 came to me from a known trusted seller, and it was in okay condition. I had to derust it. I had to flatten the sole, clean up the cheeks a little bit. I have not yet done anything with the Japanning, and I'm not sure if I will. The blade and chip breaker, also known as the cutting iron and cap iron, had to be totally derusted and cleaned and squared and set up. That's a given when you find an old plane, either of these. But all in all, the condition of this plane was okay. Out of pocket, I have $100 in this. So that's what I'm considering the entry point. Now, if you're lucky enough to find one in pristine condition for $50, more power to you. Lightly restore it and sharpen it and use it in good health. Same with the 604. Now, this one was loaned to us by David in Texas, and this one came to me in as purchased condition. I have no idea what he paid for it, but in looking on the internet, Bedrock 604.5s are not cheap, okay? And this one, as mentioned earlier, has a corrugated sole. I did lightly flatten the sole just to make sure that we could use it in the shootout. But here again, you're going to put in a few hours at bare minimum, 1 to 2 hours of cleaning and polishing if you want to restore it. I would at least clean it, degrease it, re-oil it, and use it. That would be the bare minimum. So, this being the entry level financially, if I jump ahead to the most expensive planes, I want you to think about something. Number one, it's only up to you whether you think you need a 604.5 or a 4.5 of any one of the models. That's only up to you. I've over time in all the videos mentioned the benefits. You have more width, a more stable plane. Um, the extra 3/8 of an inch cutting surface is not that big of a deal, especially since we're going to lightly camber the blade and you lose a little bit on each side. So it's not that big of a savings. However, the width is giving you that traction. So I don't know if you know much about automobiles, but the wider the width of your tires, the more stability the car is going to have if it has a low center of gravity. Enough said there. So, jumping ahead, as I said, to the most expensive plane in the lineup, if you were to save up $1 a day, $1.50 a day, cut back on your mocha latte grande coffee once a day for a week, every week, you can afford to buy the most expensive plane, and you'll have to put in very little setup time. There's still setup time, and we'll talk about that. So, on with the comparison. Between the Stanley and the Bedrock, as I mentioned in the shootout, the only major benefit is the Bedrock frog adjustment. All right. So let's say these were closer in age, and this had heavier castings. This would be a little heavier than it is. You may gain a little bit of benefit there. Okay. When it comes to the cutting irons, these two are virtually the same. When it comes to the chip breakers, these two are virtually the same. Lever caps, knob and tote, virtually the same. They feel the same. They're comfortable. In my claw, I can grab this, keep my pointing finger out on the side, and I'm comfortable. I can use this all day long. So, the one other benefit with the Bedrock is it performed quieter. The Bedrock frog dampened the noise a little bit. So, which of these would I buy? If they were exactly the same condition, at exactly the same price, or if this one were 10 or 20% more, I'd buy the Bedrock. If, however, they're in the same condition and this one's 100% more, I'd buy the Stanley. Just a plain 4.5. You'll be served well, especially if you tune it up properly and take good care of it. So, that being said, with the Stanleys, the next question comes, we're going to move these here. The next question comes, I'm going to introduce the Soba and the Wood River. The Soba was the second heaviest plane in the batch. It is made in India, and they manufacture the same exact plane from multiple vendors. So you could be getting one and you don't know it's made by Soba because all of your customer service and warranty is going to be by the name that is on the plane. All right. I'm not going to name names, but just pick a name. All right. Just like the Wood River is not made here in the United States for woodcraft. but Woodcraft is the sole importer and they perform all the customer service and warranty. So when you're buying tools, you want to consider the support after the sale. Woodcraft is a well-known company. There are stores throughout the United States. Some of you are fortunate enough to have one near you. I do not. Um, so you can walk in and you can talk to someone there and say, listen, I'm having a problem with this. What do I need to do? What am I doing wrong? Or what might Woodcraft be willing to do to help? So customer service is key when we're talking about tools coming from someone other than the manufacturer. All right. And I'm sure there are others out there. These are the only two that I have. So in comparing these two, the Wood River is a little bit lighter, but dimensionally very similar. The cutting irons, the chip breakers, very similar. Same thing with the lever caps. Couple little different quirks. And as to the lever cap jockeying, I'm finding out that one of the things that you need to consider is if you have an older plane or a new plane and your lever cap is jockeying out, then perhaps, and I don't want to say it could partially be user error because it's not really an error, it's just how we're using the tool. So if I come in and I set the plane up and I bring the blade, the cutting edge, right to the edge or the surface of the sole of the plane, and then I back it up slightly, just a quarter turn, so that there is no blade exposed, no cut. That's normal user technique. Then proceed to advance very slowly until you begin to get your cut. If we're planing for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a half hour, maybe we're planing a real cranky piece of wood, and you think your blade actually might be getting dull because you're going to have to advance, then you're advancing too much, then you come back and you're retracting it, and then you're advancing it again and you're retracting, and you do that over and over and over. It could be time to just take the lever cap off, take the blade set out and sharpen it. Put it back in, reset everything, and go. So that is one of the points that was brought up in conversations, that usually by the time the lever caps jockey enough to loosen, it's usually time to sharpen the blade anyway. So when it comes to these two planes, which is better? Well, the Soba, to me, the tote feels more like the Stanley, so therefore it's more comfortable to me. Now, some people, maybe with a slightly smaller mitt, probably find the Wood River absolutely 100% acceptable. One of the things I would love to see changed is the screw on top of the Soba is protruding too much and it's cutting into my hand. So I would either like to see that be more of an oval or be recessed a bit more. My first choice is to almost flatten that out. On the Wood River, It's not as much of an issue, but here again, theirs is recessed a bit and should be a little more oval so that it's smooth. But it's not that uncomfortable. And if we're going to get nitpicky, we can go to the tote screw. And this on the Soba has a raised flat top screw. That should either be recessed or should be a oval head screw. On the Wood River, it's recessed too much, but that's not going to bother you. I would put a couple washers under that myself just to bring that up, because dust and dirt's going to get stuck in there. As to the steel and the cut and the wear resistance, they're about the same, and they both use what almost appears to be the same exact screw to hold the lever cap on, and it is flat underneath it, which means it rides on top of the lever cap without a conical countersink underneath it to get it to nestle in that slot. I would change that if I were asked to design a plane. I'd make it conical so it fits in that slot. Now, price point wise, my research tells me that the Soba typically is coming in slightly less in cost than the Wood River, regardless of where you buy it. It may be about $25 to $50, but just slightly less cost. So there again, it comes back to wherever you buy your plane, are you going to get customer service? So with these two planes, it doesn't really matter which you buy. If you can work through the idiosyncrasies, then they'll both perform. Now, I would say, and I don't know for certain, but some of you noticed that I did in my interlude yesterday mention that I took the Wood River to the granite plate with my fine abrasive, and I did find it had a high spot that was causing it to steer funny. So it was a little high out here, and it had a high spot all along this edge. So there again, should we be expected to have a granite plate that is flat within a half a thousandth and the abrasive necessary to flatten soles of our planes when they're brand new? Perhaps. Perhaps it's a function of saving money. You got to put a little work into it. Same thing with flattening the back of your cutting iron. That's why most of us these days don't bother trying to flatten the entire back. We use the David Charlesworth ruler technique. So, in conclusion, for these two, you really can't go wrong with either one, understanding you're going to put a little bit of work in and it's going to perform however you set it up. So the Soba, which is sold under many different names, versus the Wood River, I would probably buy the Wood River. If for no other reason, the customer service. And being an American citizen, Woodcraft is an American company, we're supporting our own people through all the stores that they have employees in. That being said, We go back here and we get the next two contenders. The Veritas, 4.5. We have the regular 4.5 and the custom 4.5. Now, I learned a lot with these two planes. They both have the Norris style adjuster, and they both have a little bit of backlash. That could be improved, especially if you're making a Norris style adjuster. That said, if you wanted to save the price difference between the 4.5 and the custom, go with the 4.5. Save about what, $40 or $50, something like that. As to comfort, this one is heavier. This one has no place for my finger, so I have to hold it different. As to comfort, right out of the box, I would go with the regular 4.5, only because I'm old school. And I'm also a little bit biased to the regular 4.5 because the cutting iron and the cap iron or chip raker are more familiar to me. They're the standard, similar to the Stanley item. It doesn't have a lever cap, it has the screw adjuster. Oh well, that's just a manufacturing preference. I'm not sure. And do I have anything to test it? No. I'm not even sure if it feels heavy enough that I'm pretty sure. What do I have? Got to have something here. All right. I have a magnet. That is steel. This is not. That's iron. This is not. I don't know what this is. It is heavy. So that would be something good or bad. Don't know. As to how the tote is attached to the frog with these two cast iron, or cast, I should say, wings, I don't even know if the frog is cast iron. Yes, it is. That's a unique design. For what it is. It performed perfectly. It was machined perfectly. I have nothing bad to say about it. The adjustable toe makes it. Wait a minute. No, this one doesn't have the adjustable toe. This one has the adjustable toe. So how they attach the knob, I don't know because there's no screw. It's got to be built into the knob itself, but that makes the top nice and smooth. Now, having said all that about the standard 4.5, let me yammer on a little bit about the custom. It has so many unique features that you really have to almost be a total novice and never have touched a plane to pick up this plane and learn how to plane, because there are unique features to it, some advanced features to it. I like the adjustable toe because you can close or open the mouth as needed. Is that necessary? Don't know. The other custom feature, which I was not able to test, however, we'll talk in another video, you can change the frog. You order a different frog, you take everything apart, you put the other frog back in and put it all back together, and instead of 45 degrees, you could actually go down to 40, or you could go up to 50 or 55. I'm not sure if they do a 60, but you can put custom frogs in there, which allow you to deal with cranky woods. That's a plus. It comes at a cost. As to the blade set, yeah, they have enough room here. There's enough room there that they could have put a standard blade set in. It would not have been in your way. Bring that Norris adjuster up a little bit more. But they didn't. They came up with a new design for their blade set, one which you need to have an Allen key, which they provide, to take the cap iron off of the cutting iron. And don't lose that screw. All right, so that being said, the lever cap is also, this is slightly magnetic, so this is probably cast stainless. The lever cap is interesting. As they, instead of a single pin here, they added a foot or a flange so that when you tighten it down, it doesn't make marks on the blade set. Gives you a little bit more purchase. But as I said, the one thing I would do, if I were buying one of these right out of the gate, I would order up 2 spare screws. I would order up a spare mounting flange or disc, whatever they call it, and 2 more of those screws. And I would put them in an envelope or a jar, and I would mark them what they are and put them in the box that the plane came in, and I'd save the box. Because $1 to a donut, I guarantee you, you give me this plane for 1 week in my shop, I'll lose the screw. So, that being said, if the good people at Veritas are watching, one of the things I would do is change from an Allen key to a slotted screw for both of those. That way, if you lose the Allen key, you can use a regular screwdriver and make necessary adjustments. See, so that brings back a comment I had in regards to the jockeying. Here is one where the screw is countersunk, beveled on the bottom, and the cap has a matching bevel. See that? Just a thought. I have a lot of those. There we go. So you have the adjustable toe, you have the new blade set design, you have this wide open space here with no place for the finger. However, let me just check something. I'm curious now. And yes, the lever cap screw is beveled and there is a recessed countersink here too. Well done, Veritas, well done. If I were shopping for a plane, a 4.5 smoother, one of the benefits of the custom is it's lighter. It's lighter weight, less fatiguing. Okay, number one, from a standpoint of geography, if I lived in Canada, there would be no question I'd be buying one of these two. Simply because I'd be sponsoring a company in Canada, workers in Canada. So that is a matter of loyalty. However, I'm not in Canada, so I have to pay for them in US dollars here, which either they would come direct from Veritas through customs, through the border and get here, or I'd have to find a reseller here in the United States, which I probably would buy from a reseller here in the United States because I'd be sponsoring an American company. However, I have bought direct from Lee Valley. So there's that. Decisions, decisions, decisions. From a traditional planing standpoint, I would go with the regular 4.5. So if you're old school and you don't like a lot of change, go with the 4.5. If, however, you want a plane with some superior features, go with the custom. I honestly really like the way this performed. Even with the learning curves, I loved the way this performed. And being lighter, this one would get my vote. Plus the fact that I would have some options as to knob and tote and frog and blade. So there's a lot of options. So there's still the Allen key thing, but maybe they could design a holder for it in the plane. I don't know. Maybe a hole in the frog. Think about it, Veritas. So that's those two. So as of right now, I'm going shopping for a plane. If I'm on a budget, and I have time and I have the knowledge to restore a plane, I'd be looking at older planes, Stanley, Miller's Falls, um, Record. Uh, there's a whole bunch of them out there. In the UK, I think it's called Wooden, Woden. Um, there's a lot of good old tools out there you can get at a reasonable price as long as they're not a rust bucket. And now, on to the final two, the big guns. And this is where only you can decide where to go with your money. Every single plane on this bench, on this unusual piece of cherry, and on the beach, performed, give or take, about the same. Okay? How sharp you keep your blade, how tight you set your chip breaker, how fine you set the mouth opening will all determine on its performance. I did the best I could. Human error could come into play here, but I set these all up as close as I could to each other. That being said, let's get on to the Lie-Nielsen and the Clifton. These two are considered, along with the Veritas, the top of the line. Now, fit and finish. You can't get any better than these tools. These are the top of the line. Everything is made properly. Everything fits together properly. And here too, they're both using flat bottom screws for their lever cap screws. So that's a recommendation to both Lie-Nielsen and Clifton to consider. I'm not saying do it, but if you had a countersink in this slot and a counter and a beveled screw head underneath, I think you would get better purchase. That or now, Lie-Nielsen is pretty close to perfectly flat in the area where the screw head meets. It is critical not to over buff that area. It's critical to keep that perfectly flat right from the beginning of the screw hole to the end of the slot. An observation. I did take engineering in school, but I'm not an engineer. Clifton buffed their cap iron pretty heavily, and it is rounded up to that slot. I'd flatten that. But both of them, I did not experience much jockeying. If I pushed it to its limits, yes, it would do it. In other words, if I advanced a whole full turn and I retracted a whole full turn, I did that over and over and over, yeah, it would mess it up. But as I said, under normal use, that wouldn't happen. So, on to the simple facts. How does it feel in the hand? So, in gripping, I would say the Lie-Nielsen grips a little bit more like the Wood River. It's a little heavier, than the Stanleys. There's a little extra wood in here, right in here. Remember, when you buy a tool, it's your tool, and you can modify that. All right? All you need is a fine rasp, some files, and some sandpaper, and then refinish it. You can make it fit your hand if you have bigger hands or smaller hands. But all in all, that feels acceptable. I still like the older Stanleys, personally. Believe it or not, the Soba has a good handle. The Veritas ones are different, but they feel okay. So that's the handle. And the knob is pretty much a standard knob, and the fitting on the top is almost the way I like it. I would probably find myself a small washer and drop it in under there to raise that brass up so that it's flush with the wood. As I said, fit and finish, you can't go wrong. I love the brass or bronze lever cap. I think that is distinctive and stylish, and it doesn't really need to be cast iron. I like that. Always did. Always liked that part of the design. And as I mentioned, this was a loaner, a demo plane. So it had been used by other people. So it had been tinkered with, and it performed perfectly. The Clifton is mine. This was a gift partially from my son and myself, chipped in, and we purchased this. Now, the Clifton has not truly been what I call initialized yet. I have not taken that fine abrasive on the granite plate and run it on there. The tote is a little bit more like the Veritas, a little more straight up and down. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about the screw on the top. It's proud, but only because it's round head. If it were oval or flat, it wouldn't be a problem. But right now, it's cutting my hand when I touch it. And as to the screw on top of the tote, that's irrelevant, but it too is round. And the toe screw is a flat top, but it is mostly recessed. I would like to see that oval Clifton. As to getting down into these planes, you're looking at the frogs. They are very, well, no, they're not very similar. The Lie-Nielsen has the wider square frog. The Clifton is tapered. Don't know why, but it is. And I can see my blade touching here and here and down in the bottom. On the Lie-Nielsen, I can see it touching here and here and down on the bottom. So function-wise, they're identical. The Clifton, the pins that hold the frog in do not have an indicator on it as to the side where the hole is, whereas the Lie-Nielsen are clearly marked with a little slot. I don't know if you can see it, but it tells you that these pins have to be pointing that way. in order to engage. So this is sort of a, how shall I say, not a bias, but a loaded kind of review because I already own the Clifton. However, if I were to use what I'm learning here for future purchases of different planes, because what you're learning here you can apply to any other plane, a number 4, a number 5, a number 6, a number 7, and if the company makes a number 8. Some companies don't make a number 8. I know Lie-Nielsen does. It's an aircraft carrier. So, from a weight standpoint, if you want the plane to hold itself down and not blow away in a stiff wind, you get the Clifton. Weight-wise, it's the Clifton, it's the Soba, it's the Lie-Nielsen. If you are a resident of the UK and you can get the Clifton cheaper than the Lie-Nielsen, you can't go wrong. If you're in the United States and you can get the Lie-Nielsen a little less costly than a Clifton, buy the Lie-Nielsen. Both of these planes are top-notch. If I were buying one today, I'm not sure I'd buy the Clifton. Let me explain why. I love the performance of the Custom Veritas. I love the performance of it. Absolutely a joy to use. Got some quirks. I'd have to get over that. It comes from Canada. I'm not supporting American workers. I am supporting Canadian workers. They're our cousins to the north, right? Right. I have always, I'm sorry, I had at one time a complete set of nearly, I shouldn't say a complete set, I had a set of Lie-Nielsens. I just loved them. Due to life-changing events, I had to part with them all. It was a matter of finances. You know the old saying, you pick the low-hanging fruit first? Well, that was what I had to do. I've been up to Maine. I've been on a tour of their warehouse, their manufacturing. I've seen how they do the work there. I've met people there. I've met Tom Lie-Nielsen. In fact, I've been there 3 times. Every time I left with more tools. But that being said, if I simply budgeted myself out and I took myself a coffee can or a milk jug or something, and I put in $1, a bunch of quarters, some 50-cent pieces every day, every day. Within a year's time, I could buy this plane cash money. You could do that with any of these. Now, here's the thing. I'm no longer a professional woodworker. I don't do it for a daily living. So I would have to consider a purchase like this as a hobby purchase. And a hobby is also something you should be enjoying. So if part of your hobby is restoring the old ones and using the old ones, fantastic. If, however, your hobby is actually in creating things, making things out of wood, as opposed to trying to tinker with tools, then you need a tool that is going to work out of the box within reason. You have to be reasonable. You have to understand that you may need to just take some burrs off someplace that maybe somebody missed. Okay. You will need to work on your blade. You're going to have to sharpen that. Okay. You can't go wrong with a Lie-Nielsen, and you cannot go wrong with a Clifton. And as of right now, I would say for the most part, you can't go wrong with any of these planes within your budget. I would be cautious, understanding you're going to have to put work into it with any of the planes. I don't want to include the Wood River, but from the Wood River down in price. Okay? Number one, do not buy a $29 plane, a $39 plane, a $50 plane from a big box store like Lowe's, Home Depot, Horrible Freight, Northern Tool, any of those companies, and expect it to work. One, out of the box, and two, within reason. You're going to have to put work in. And early in the year, I did a review of a plane. I'm not going to mention it again because I said we wouldn't talk about it anymore. It wasn't worth the materials it was made out of, period. So, from a design standpoint and a fit and finish standpoint, these are beautiful. I need to go through my Clifton. I need to make time. Number one, I need to polish everything. It's been sitting. And number two, I need to make it my own. I need to put it on the granite plate. I need to decide what I'm going to do about the screw on the top here. Because I may even get a machinist to make me one or see if this one can be rounded enough and a new slot cut in it. See, there already is a washer down in there. So we'll have to see. Or I may just polish it up, take it in the office, and it'll be there for me to look at. Nah, it belongs in the workshop. So there you go, everybody. In closing, I am going to mention something that does bother me with all of the planes. Yeah, I would say the Clifton and the Wood River come in with a semi-gloss finish. The rest are more of a matte slash semi-gloss. I like the gloss. I like the old Japanning gloss. And I know what they do, because in modern finishing, there's a couple of finishing techniques for iron. Um, and almost everything today is powder coated, or it's some form of ceramic coating. And they're generally not high gloss. So everyone's doing pretty much the same. The Clifton has a little bit of a semi gloss, as does the Wood River, just a little. But all the rest are matte finish. Not flat, matte, with maybe a little sheen. Won't affect the use of the plane. So this has been a long video. If you stuck through this whole series and you still have questions, put them down in the comment section. Find a way to message me. We live in a world today where there's information about me in the account. You can email me, etc. And so over the next few days, I'll be cleaning up each and every one of these, packing them up and returning them, not the Clifton and not my 4.5. But the rest of them are going to be going back. These are going back to Canada. These are going back to the makers. This one's going back to David in Texas, where he can continue to restore if he so chooses. This one's going back over there on the shelf. And this one will get cleaned and polished and put back in the box temporarily. And this one's going to Maine, unfortunately. I'd like to keep it. Nah, you can only have so many 4.5 planes, right? So glad you could be with me and go through this together. And I hope we learned something. That no matter which one of these planes you can afford, you'll get a good result. Now, there are some others out there I would love to have gotten in here. I would have loved to have gotten in from the makers in China. I would have loved to have gotten in a Luban from Quengshan. However, the Wood River is manufactured by that same company, so there's a no compete clause. In fact, they sell them over in the UK, the Luban, and I can't buy them from the UK. They will not ship to the United States. They did it one time. Ask me how I know. Go look back in my earlier videos. I had Luban tools here. And the other one, and I'm not sure where it's coming out of. I have a sneaking suspicion I do know, but I can't say. But it's a company in Germany, Dichtum, and they have their own line, and I believe they have beach knobs and totes of their own design. So if you're in Germany or the surrounding countries, look up Dichtum, Dictum, Dichtum. And I'll see if I can put a link down in the comments, in the description box. But there's a lot of different companies out there, and I'm sure there are some that we can never ever see because they're in countries like I don't know, Romania, Ukraine, Poland, Russia. I don't know. Um, I'm sure there are other companies out there, but we just never get to see them here. Um, and I'm sure the woodworkers there, they buy good tools from their own makers. So, ding, we hit the 1 hour mark. Like, subscribe, and share, and head out to your shop. Go make some shavings. Walter out.